Hi, my name is Terry. I'm the founder of Shine.Online, your ultimate health and wellness directory, where we connect health and wellness professionals from a wide variety of holistic fields with wellness seekers from around the globe. Today, I'm really excited to share with you one of our featured practitioners, Nikki Harris. Nikki helps women over 40 facing hormonal changes achieve a sense of balance and well-being by focusing on hormone-friendly foods. In just 4 weeks, you can regain control of your life and your body without feeling overwhelmed or deprived. So without further ado, thank you so much, Nikki, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Terry. Thanks for the invite. I've been really looking forward to this.
Yes, me too. You have a fascinating story, and I love what you do. Can you tell us a bit more about how you got into being a nutritional therapist?
Yeah, of course. So I'm now 49, but I know in my late teens to early 20s, I had quite bad acne, and I was put on antibiotics for about 18 months by the GP. And little did I know back then that it actually sort of really upset all of my gut microbiome. And I started to struggle with foods, and I had certain food allergies, which were really aggravating me. So I went to the GP, they gave me some medications and some fiber gel and said eat more fruit, which I did, but it actually made things worse. So I went off and found my own way. I'd always been interested in supplements and went to the health food shop quite regularly. And I found a pamphlet. Cut a long story short, I went to see a kinesiologist, and she really set me on the path to understand through my diet and making changes, drinking more water, cutting out sugar. I had a candida overgrowth, by the way, that it really started to reduce the bloating. I started to kind of I felt really swollen and bloated. I started to kind of like depuff, if you like. So that really kind of piqued an interest in me. So I really took an interest in what I was eating. I was drinking more water, bearing in mind at the time I was in my early 20s and probably out drinking most weekends and eating a burger or a pizza when I left the town, and then feeling quite rotten for days afterwards. So I think from then on in, I really got into nutrition and studied it personally in my own time. And then in my late 30s, I took the plunge and studied as a nutritional therapist here in the UK. So fast forward 3 years, I got my diploma, I graduated in London, and then I have started my own business, and here I am. So I still struggle with my gut health. It's always like a sort of Achilles heel for me. So I need to be very mindful. If I have too much wine or I've eaten a bit of junk food over Christmas, then, my gut will really notice it. So I just really need to be mindful. So even now, with all my experience and with my good diet, I know that sometimes if you do go off track, then it really can sort of bring back the bloating or the constipation, so it is really a work in progress. It's not just, oh, I'm a nutritionist now and I've magically fixed myself, because your body is a living organism, and it sort of processes things from a day-to-day basis. So it is a constant way of living for me now, and it has been for many, many years. And I do feel so much better when I eat well, sleep well, and don't drink too much alcohol. I think we all do. So yeah, that was really my intro into nutrition, and it's always been a passion of mine. I'm always sort of wanting to, help somebody, or if you feel this way, try and do this, try and do that, take this, take that, eat this, even though they might not ask it and it might be unsolicited advice. I still have that I can help. So I've kind of got that in me. It's like, well, I know how well you can feel when you look after yourself, but it's really kind of articulating that to people, to kind of say to them, look, follow my lead and we can get you from A to B and get you back to feeling really well again. And that's the bit I really love. Just knowing that I can help somebody, and even though they're not quite on board with what I'm doing, they're probably like, oh, she's asked me to eat this or take that out of my diet. It's like, hate me now, love me later.
For sure.
It is.
I'm laughing because as a fellow holistic nutritionist,
Yeah.
I fall in the same boat. I'm always
Yeah.
so excited to share things with people and the biomechanics of it, and they look at me with like glazed eyes, and I have to
Yeah.
rein it in. But we're so passionate about what we do,
Yeah.
so I can totally relate. And you have just a very relatable story because more and more people are having problems that they don't understand the
Yeah.
root issue. And the doctors, God bless them, are doing their best, but they've just not received the kind of in-depth nutritional training that people like you and I have. So, what do you do specifically in your practice? How do you help people?
Yeah. So great question, actually, because I've been doing this for around 6 years now. And when I left college, as you'll know, it's very much initial consultation, follow up, follow up, follow up. And during that time together with my client, it would be, a questionnaire asking them about it. So in terms of supporting them, it would be through diet, through supplementation, and if we did any testing. So I used to find that process quite heavy in terms of the work that would be done behind the scenes, and also for the client, because you would be asking them potentially to making changes to their diet. You'd be asking them to do some form of test, then giving them the test results and them having to take that on board, then expecting them to take these supplements as well. So for somebody that isn't really used to working in this way, I found it can be very overwhelming for the client. We want clients to be compliant, and to make it as easy as possible, make that transition as easy as possible. And also it can be quite expensive by the time you've paid fees. Testing can be quite expensive, and so can supplements if we're using decent therapeutic supplements. So I've completely turned the way I work around now. So what I do is almost like I say to my clients, it's like building a house. We can't build a house unless we've got that foundation solid. So I've now designed my own 4-week program, which is purely food only. So I educate my clients and I take them on a journey through the 5 weeks that we work together. And I show them how they can actually learn how food can be so powerful that it can change the way that they feel and how they feel in themselves. So that way there's no confusion of, oh, well, I'm taking that supplement, so I can carry on eating these foods, and then, oh, but I can take that supplement and everything's okay. So if we work purely on food and somebody's 9 times out of 10, many of the niggling symptoms will subside or improve or reduce or disappear because we've addressed the diet. So the client will know then from the off that that particular food group or these particular food groups that you're eating a lot of were actually aggravating and driving the symptoms that you had. So I work with my clients, my 4-week program, I take them over a 5-week period. So I give them a break in between to get themselves prepared mentally and get their cupboards and their larders prepared. So they really, really understand the power of food. Then after the time we've worked together and they still have ongoing issues that they would like to address, or I feel that needs further investigation, then we will look at maybe doing a stool test, a gut test, or maybe we'll look at doing some blood work, having a look at what's going on. Then we can correct with more tweaks to the diet, and then we can potentially look at adding in some supplements. So I find for me, that's the way I like to work. And I don't actually think there's anybody in the area that I live in, so I live in Plymouth in the UK, that is doing the same thing. So I'm quite proud of what I've designed and how I'm working, because I just think there is so much that food can do. It can make you feel dreadful, it can make you feel utter crap, or it can make you feel great. And it just, I can't articulate it enough that when you eat the foods that your body needs and not the junk you're chucking in, the processed foods that we don't need. Yeah, that's my mission, and I'm so passionate about that. I really am.
And that's what I love about you is that you're focusing on the foundation, which is food. We've unfortunately over the last few decades have become a pill mentality
Yeah.
society where if you have a problem, just take a pill. And that has translated to the world of supplements. And so people think, well, I'm intolerant to gluten, let me just take a gluten enzyme. And that, and they think that they can continue to disrespect their body's needs by counteracting with a pill or a supplement and not understanding that that's still causing damage to the body, and not understanding the role that food plays in their own health, not just in the moment, but long term. So
Yeah.
I really, really love that you're having that educational component for people to really understand their own biochemical individuality, what their body needs in order to be healthy. That's fantastic. Now, what are some of the symptoms that people have when they reach out to you?
So yeah, so I mainly work with women over 40. And many of the symptoms that I get, and I find one of the key areas that I really enjoy working with is weight loss. I feel that many of the sort of traditional diet models that are out there, I know there are some probably got big names in the US and there's names over here in the UK, but the way that I understand and through my training and my ongoing training is that it's really looking at, it almost kind of turns the conventional diet model on its head. So I really love that. It's almost like, yeah, but I've got an ace up my card. You've tried all of these diets, but I know how we're really going to get you to lose weight, and it's not what you think. You can still eat and eat and eat and eat, and you never feel full. But when you really explain that to people, they're like, yeah. So I love that. I love that element because I'm extremely confident in that area, and it's one that I really love. So I think a lot of women that are kind of 40 plus are struggling with some kind of hormonal changes. Maybe they're experiencing some mood issues, or they've got some hot flushes, or they're starting to experience pain. Sleep can be interrupted. Just trying to think of all of the clients that I'm working with. Yeah, mainly a lot of my clients are weight loss, but it's never just weight loss. So there'll always be something else. Maybe they're bloated, maybe they're not going to the toilet as regularly as they'd like. So it's never really just, oh, it's just my weight. There'll be an element of maybe they've got a thyroid condition, maybe they're on levothyroxine, and we have to kind of then, trace that back. We know it's not just the thyroid. We then need to look at the adrenal glands and how the body is stressed. Is that client stressed? Because it's not always about the food. It can be very much about the lifestyle. So I think there's not a person on this planet that doesn't know what stress feels like. And we are all glued to our phones. We're constantly like this. And, I think we have just become so adapted to stress. We don't know what it feels like to be unstressed. And this is driving so many symptoms and nutrient deficiencies. Vitamin D it can be a big one, and yeah, the list can go on and on and on. So yeah, I feel that there will be an element of sort of hormonals, or even I'll sort of, I've got a client at the moment who's just come off the pill. She's been on the pill, so she has that post-pill irregularity with her cycles. So again, we're looking at her diet and things like that. So yeah, that's really the symptoms that I'm kind of dealing with. I don't deal with really complex cases because things like autoimmune and things like that, that's not an area that I've particularly chosen to work with, nor children or pregnancy. But certainly with that area, I really feel that there's a lot can be done for women to support them as they make that change from their 40s into perimenopause and then menopause and beyond. I do feel that a lot of women are bamboozled by the word menopause. They don't really know what it is. It's not just HRT. It's not just, yeah. So I really feel there's a lot in the way that I can support many of the symptoms that go alongside that transition.
That's so exciting and so fantastic because we've got a large demographic of women that are, premenopausal, menopausal, and are experiencing these kinds of things. So I know from my own experience that there's a lot of women seeking help in that area, and not that many people specialize in it. So it's very exciting that you do. Now, if I were a prospective client listening
Mhm.
to you and talking about diet, one question I would have is, is she going to take me off red meat? Or I'm a vegetarian, is she going to force me to eat red meat? Like, what are your views on choices for proteins?
Yeah, I mean, I always lead with the client, so I will have my recommendations. But if someone is an avid vegan or vegetarian, then there is absolutely no way that I would be unethical to say you need to start eating meat when that person's made a personal preference to be a vegan. My personal opinion is that animal proteins have a higher amino acid profile, so you'll get more bang for your buck in terms of protein. But if you've got someone that really doesn't want to eat meat for their own personal reasons, then you have to work with them where they're at. I will make suggestions that it might be wise to swap out red meat and then add in more chicken, fish, oily fish, eggs, and maybe have red meat maybe once a week rather than having it quite frequently. But again, we all have our own decisions. We are adults, we can make a choice. I can only give them my recommendation, and then whether or not they take that up is down to them. But most clients are complying, and if they have any issues, then we'll work it out between us. So we'll kind of meet somewhere in the middle and go, okay, you're not able to stretch that far, what can we do with where we're at? So it's almost about, it's that renegotiating. But I generally find most of my clients do kind of jump on board, but that's fine. If things need to be altered, then we just work with people where they're at and move them forward in baby steps, or take like giant leaps if that's where they're ready to go. So yeah.
Fantastic. I've heard you use the word compliant a few times. I know that's a term that professionals use, but if someone hasn't heard it, how would you explain the word compliant to them?
So basically it means how well you can sort of stick to the recommendations that I've given you. So if how well you're going to follow the plan, how well you're going to follow my recommendations, if there's any sort of resistance, or I haven't done that because, and we see it a lot as practitioners,
Excuses.
I haven't done it this week because, and then I kind of try and sort of tease that out of them and see what that resistance is, because oftentimes there is that resistance to change. But I feel that can be built over a good working relationship. So compliant is just basically being able to have the willingness to follow a plan without force, really. I think that's probably my interpretation of it.
Yeah. It's always fun to work with clients who are excited to try new things, who are excited saying, what I've been doing hasn't been working. So I'm excited to try something new, and I'm just going to dive in and commit to the recommendations and see where that leads me. And I know for myself, the most excited clients have been those who said, I followed your recommendations. You told me it would take 6 months, but in 3 months, I've seen drastic changes. And they're so excited because they've really followed the advice that we're giving them. So that's fantastic. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what a client may experience working with you?
Yeah, certainly. So a lady I worked with quite recently, she had phenomenal results in just the 4 weeks. So she came to me, she was desperate. She was just about to speak to her GP about getting her signed off sick because she just couldn't function. She was just so tired all the time. So it was a radical change because her diet needed some attention. But that's great, because I love that, because there's a lot of wiggle room in terms of getting them from A to B, from feeling utterly crap to, oh my God, I didn't know it existed that I could feel like this. So she was eating chocolate bars to keep her awake, basically. And she'd put on 4 stone since she
Which
hit
is
menopause.
how many pounds for those of us who don't know what stones are?
There's 4, pretty UK of me. So there's 14 pounds in a stone. I don't know the kilogram conversion.
That's
Math,
all right.
my strong point.
So, but it was a
Yeah.
substantial amount of weight, it sounds like.
She'd put
If
on quite
one
a lot of
stone
weight.
is 14 pounds.
Yeah, one stone is 14 pounds. So within the 4 weeks of working together, when she'd followed my food plan, with my guidance, she'd lost 1.5 stone. She was due to go in for an Achilles heel operation, and she could barely walk down the stairs of a morning. And by the time she'd finished working with me, she went out for an 8-mile coastal walk with her husband. And
wow.
yeah, she'd been on medication for around 3 or 4 years, and nothing had touched it. Yeah, it's honestly, she is just, yeah, it was just, I was just so, that lovely, heartfelt, like you've made a difference in someone's life. And it's just, you can't put a price on that feeling, can you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, she was getting quite grumpy, and her husband was noticing her mood had changed. So even her husband had said, you feel a lot calmer and you're more, on an even keel. Her pain threshold had gone from a 10 down to a 1 to 2 to a 1 in the 4 weeks. She was sleeping better. Just trying to think now of the way. So she was a real, she had made substantial gains in just 4 weeks. And, she really loved the fact that in my 4-week program, everything's laid out for you in the 4-week program. You've got recipes and meal plan, sort of advice, guidance, journaling pages, trackers for your weight and your hips and your tape measurements. So she loved the fact that in that program, there was a 7-day example plan. So because she couldn't in her head physically work out, she liked the fact that she could refer to this plan and be like, oh, this is a sample day and I can eat this. And then maybe I'll choose a couple of snacks from the list. And then obviously as we worked together, we just tweaked that to her preferences. So she said, oh, can I change that turkey to fish, or things like that. So another lady I worked with, she followed my food plan. She lost 12 pounds.
Wow.
Her hot flushes had reduced. The other lady, her hot flushes had reduced. They didn't disappear because they don't. Just the intensity and the frequency had reduced. The other lady, she was actually living in her spare room, and her husband and her were sleeping apart because of her hot flushes. So that had actually improved, and that she was able to move back into, the marital bed, which I think had a significant strain on their relationship. So she lost 12 pounds in weight. Another lady, she had lost 4 pounds, but the best part of it is that she managed to conquer her snacking. She was snacking all the time, but because she followed the plan, she understood the process. She didn't feel the need for snacking because she was full. So there's a lot of women I've worked with, clients that have had, one lady I'd worked with last year or the year before, she had chronic constipation where she was taking laxatives. She had diverticulitis, which is an inflammatory bowel disease where pockets of food can get stuck in the diverticuli. And she was, she wasn't going to the toilet for days on end unless she took a laxative. So we worked together for about 9 months, and she was managing to have 2 daily bowel movements naturally. We got her off the laxatives and we restored her gut health. So some of these stories are life-changing, for people. I mean, even if people have improved people's sleep, that can be life-changing for someone. It doesn't have to be the big fanfare. It can just be a case of, actually, I'm going from having like 6 hours sleep where I was only having 2, and we all know how detrimental to our health 2 hours sleep can be, and how utterly grumpy and grotty we feel.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, those are amazing stories.
Yeah.
That's really impressive, and it just shows the power of diet, and because our bodies are made of what we feed it and what we do to it through lifestyle. So it's just really impressive and really exciting when we get results like that. If for someone who's watching, would there be a couple of tips that you could give them to get started?
Yeah, so certainly with weight loss, I would definitely say, we don't probably need me to tell you that, but the processed foods, so the sugars, the fried foods, the microwave meals, and the foods that we get out of the freezer, a lot of the times they're devoid of any fiber, devoid of any nutrients, high in inflammatory oils, which is omega-6s, low in proteins, high in sugars, all of the things that create the perfect storm. So avoid sugars, processed foods. Avoid snacking in between meals unless you're really hungry. I always say to my clients, 3 meals a day, no snacking, unless you feel lightheaded, where that means your blood sugar levels have dropped, or you are genuinely hungry when your belly starts to grumble. And in those times, I think sometimes we can eat out of an emotion, like, oh, I've had a really bad day, I'm just going to demolish the bag of Oreos, or, that's just, I've had a ding dong with him indoors or your husband, and I'm going to drink like a whole bottle of red wine. We can use our bodies as a good old punching bag when things aren't particularly going well. And then that becomes a cycle then of like, oh, why did I eat that whole tub of Haagen-Dazs? And why did I eat that? And oh, I'm useless. I'm this, I'm that. So it creates that vicious circle. And that's another thing that I help my clients with is break that sort of food, relying on food to feel that emotion, or sort of using words that cause, like, food's a treat or it's a sin. Food is food, So yeah, and also go easy on fruit juice as well, because fruit juice, like a pint of orange, I know we all think orange, apple juice, pineapple juice, it's really healthy. The fruit in itself is, when it's got the whole fruit, because we've got the fiber and the nutrients to help blunt those blood sugars. But when we're just drinking a pure pint of orange juice, we think it's healthy, but it's full of sugar, full of fructose. Yep. And that is a really surefire way to put on fat around the midsection. And I know a lot of women struggle with their weight gain around their midsection when they hit their 40s. So yeah, and go easy on the fruit. Yeah, fruit juice can be a big one.
Yep. That's great advice. It's fantastic advice. And so when we're shopping, we need to find alternatives to those things for sure.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with eating fruit in its whole, but if we're going to have like fruit, like an apple or a pear or a kiwi fruit, then have that with a couple of almonds or a handful of walnuts. Because what that does is the protein in the fats in the nuts help to blunt the blood sugar spikes that you would get from eating the fruit alone. So we don't want to be spiking that blood sugar, where the body then produces insulin. Too much insulin in the body can lead to pre-diabetes, and then obviously insulin is a fat storing hormone, so we don't want a diet too heavy in lots of carbs, because it can spike those insulin spikes, and then it makes weight loss nigh on impossible. So that's something I'm really passionate about, and I love to explain that to my clients when I work with them. So that's just a couple of little tips there from me.
Those are wonderful. Any other thoughts that before we go that you'd like to share with someone considering working with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you really want to feel great, I think when you're ready to make a change, when your pants are getting tight and you're just not sleeping, you're feeling sluggish, you just know that you need help. And then you're like, oh yeah, but I quite like my wine, I quite like my chocolate. And then it's almost like we make excuses not to do something until it gets so bad. You're like, oh my God, I need to do something now, when you could have done something a little bit earlier. So if you are on that fence of knowing that you need help, whether it's weight gain or whether you need some help with your hormones as you're moving from perimenopause into menopause, and you just know that you need some help, that's the time to strike. Don't leave it, because people that leave it, maybe a year later, they're a year further down the road. So strike while the iron is hot, because help is here, and it doesn't have to be eating rabbit food and lettuce leaves. I'm talking about real food, and eating a lot of real food, just not the stuff that our body doesn't need, and eating foods that our body does need. And I guarantee you that once you eat well and how your body wants that food your body wants, it will respond, and you will absolutely feel the difference. You'll see it in your skin, your eyes, your bowel movements, your mood, your weight, your vitality. You can't bottle this, and you can't feel it for someone unless you experience it for yourself.
Yep. Yep. That is fantastic. I am so excited about your 4-week program. Uh, like, I think that anyone watching this will want to learn more. And so, if you do want to find out more about Nikki and her 4-week program, we'll have a link in the description to her Shine.Online profile page. And from there, you can have access to all of her social media, as well as her direct link to her program. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her directly, or you can post a comment below. But thank you so much, Nikki, for the time you spent explaining what you do.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And I loved learning more about what you do and how you help. You genuinely help women. So thank you.
That's okay. You're welcome.